Welcome to episode 17 of So You Want to Be a Star in the Music Business. Today's topic, we are discussing the complicated world of copyrights. So, specifically in the US for now, because there's so many different versions of copyrights, we're specifically talking about copyrights for songs. So, song specific, anything written and recorded. So, we are no experts, but we just want to give you some general information. And by all means, on copyrights, you definitely want to consult an entertainment attorney and definitely do your due diligence and research copyright.gov. That's COPYRIGHT, copyright.gov. Um, but just we're trying to
Also,
keep this
before we
brief.
go further,
Mm-hmm.
also want to say for those of you who may want to, you can call for a copyright form or a publication that explains it to you. The number is area code 202-707-9100. Will get you to the U.S. Copyright Office in Washington, D.C.
Cool. So, and this is at the part in your career where you're not really playing around with your music and you're actually making some what you believe is legit material, some good songs. So we're trying to give you information, at least the basics, to cover everybody that's in that room that just created what you feel is a hit song, so that later on, when there's money involved, that there are no issues on who owns that material. So that's where the lawsuits and all the abused friendships and all of that stuff comes in later. So we're trying to give you the information to avoid that. So trying to keep it simple. Again, we're talking about music copyrights. There's two types that we're going to discuss.
What is the first type, Kevin?
The first type is what they call a copyright of the musical work, which essentially it's more concerned with the writers of the music, who the actual songwriters are. I mean, there's more to it than that, but who actually wrote the material. The second one is the sound recording or the performance of the track. So that's the second type of copyright that we're discussing on that.
And what makes this fascinating is only in the technological era that we are now in has there been a major difference between who might be considered a songwriter and who is actually an owner of the performance, the CD, the arrangements, the tracks, producing it. They are separate and different animals. In old days, there was someone who wrote the words, called the lyrics, and somebody who wrote the melody, called the music. The drum tracks were not considered songwriting. The string arrangements are not considered songwriting. The riffs that a singer performs were not considered songwriting. Some of us still believe that should be true. There are different opinions on this, and pretty much the government doesn't tell you who is entitled to be considered a songwriter. You tell the government by filling out this form.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, as I know I'm jumping ahead here, but a very basic thing. You finish a song, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, there are three of you in the room, somebody sang it, somebody, maybe you all shared in writing some words, somebody wrote the real kind of hit chorus part of it, somebody else wrote some of the riffs, somebody else did the tracks, you're all contributing to each other. First thing you do, and this is all we're going to deal with today, the first thing you do is take out a piece of paper and a pen, and you write down at the end of the evening, even if you're not finished, you write down who did what tonight, who actually sang the song, who did the most work on the tracks, and basically you just say, okay, Kevin, what do you think you did tonight that you contributed to this?
I wrote the whole thing.
And that's the problem, okay? Because say, well, wait a minute, I contributed to that. So maybe you come up with the agreement that he contributed to everything there, but whole thing is not the right answer. What does that mean? Did you write some of the words? Fine. Kevin wrote some of the words. Did you actually write the melody that the singer is singing, or did you just kind of say, no, let's change it here?
Mm-hmm.
You can write that down. It does not have to be in technical music theory language. And you put it down. You try not to go home until you've agreed, hey, guess what? We all kind of wrote some of the words. You don't have to decide how many of the words.
Mm-hmm.
We all did some of the words. You write that down. And then at the bottom of the page, everyone in the room signs it and says, I agree with what we wrote down on this piece of paper. You're not doing a copyright yet. You're not writing a legal document that's going to lock you into anything other than the fact you now don't have to have an argument a week later as to who actually did what that night. That's step number one.
Because in a perfect world, we know most people aren't just going to the copyright.gov and filling it out right at the studio. So life gets busy, things happen. So we want to make sure you just do the basics. And from what Mitch just said, that's definitely something you want to at least put into practice. And this is basically almost a napkin deal, but it's still legit if you ever have any issues. So until that official document goes into the copyright office and there's an official date recorded that's legal, do the simple things just to protect yourself from the future.
And make sure you have your correct names on there and that you date it correctly. Then you make copies of this if you can, maybe the next day, so that everyone in the room has a copy. You make a hard copy of what you did, all the music. And you put it down on CD, burn it, do whatever you have to do, so it's not just on the internet. And take that and take the piece of paper you wrote, stick it in an envelope, and mail it back to yourself. Then don't open the envelope. It is now there as evidence with a date stamped by the post office. And even though this is not the correct legal way to do anything, at least you won't argue amongst yourselves because you have evidence of what you all agreed to on that night. And if you make changes the next day or a week later, that's okay. Do it again. Just keep evidence and make sure you all stay friends. And for tonight, that's it.
Well, actually, let me do one quick definition.
Go ahead.
And this is the reason why the copyright gets so complicated because, and just to read this directly off the paper, copyright protection automatically is created as soon as, well, this is assuming that what you created is something original, that you originally made everything, is that it's anything fixed in any tangible medium of expression, now known or later developed, from which they can be perceived, reproduced, or otherwise communicated, either directly or with the aid of a machine or device. So that pretty much covers anything. So as soon as that you leave that studio and it becomes an MP3, technically it's copywritten, but now you have the issues and you have to prove when that tangible piece of work was actually created. So that's where people can get into a situation where you're battling on I made it, and you email it to somebody and they can prove because you deleted your email by mistake. So that's where these tangible things that we're saying come into play.
Especially if you're sticking it on YouTube or anywhere else immediately, or it's available, if someone is ripe to steal it.
Or your computer crashed.
Right. So what you want to have is hard copies. You want to have evidence. And as the law says, your copyright is automatically yours. Problem is, if there's more than one of you. So the question is, who owns, do you all own equal 1/3 shares? Do you own this? That's something for the law and also for you to discuss in the future. So step one, though, is to prove to yourselves what you did.
Who did what?
And then you discuss it later on. Maybe you get a lawyer, maybe your manager, maybe your uncle helps mediate who's right and who's wrong. That's for the future. But first, get the basics down. And don't be lazy. Do it. All right.
So now that's it for episode 17.
We will continue copyright discussion tomorrow on 18. See you there.